Tonight, we open a secret the church buried beneath centuries of silence. A story whispered through stone, painted in light, and erased in blood. They called it heresy, but what they truly feared was inheritance. Beneath the marble crown of St. Peter's, a crypt sealed before history began still breathes. Inside it lie the bones of a woman the Vatican never named, the one they erased to protect a lie. They said Christ left no heirs. That divinity does not bleed. But what if he did? What if the line continued, hidden in art, in relics, in living blood? Tonight, we follow that crimson thread through frescoes and archives, through prophecy and silence. We seek the lineage the church could not sanctify, the story that makes holiness human. Take a breath. Forget doctrine. Forget history as it was written. Because this story does not begin with God. It begins with those who remembered he once had a family. Welcome to Vatican Mysteries for Sleep, where faith remembers what Scripture forgot and blood still carries the light. You begin in a room without windows. Only the hum of an old film projector breaks the silence. On the wall, faded images flicker. Fragments of art, faces from centuries past, all hiding the same mark. A crimson thread woven into halos and robes. This is where it starts, with symbols, not words, with questions, not answers. You've heard the legends, the Holy Grail, the lost Gospel of Mary, the secret marriages whispered about in dark corners of cathedrals. But this is different. This isn't fiction. It's archaeology, scripture, and silence, stitched together like veins under skin. Every record you'll uncover was almost destroyed. Every painting you'll see was altered. Every genealogy rewritten until it ended where Rome wanted it to. The church learned early that power rests not in faith, but in the control of memory. And yet, memory leaks. Through art, through myth, through blood. You walk through archives where light bends strangely over ancient vellum. The names are missing, but the patterns remain. Mary Magdalene beside Christ in old frescoes. The child that appears, then disappears from one restoration to another. The bloodline that runs beneath Europe's crowned families, hidden beneath rings and crests. If it survived, it means the divine became human, not once, but again and again, in secret. So before we begin, take a breath. Forget doctrine, forget history as you were taught it. Because this story does not begin with God. It begins with those who remembered he once had a family. You enter through a door that does not exist on any map. The hinges whisper like old prayers. The corridor beyond smells of dust, parchment, and wax that has burned for centuries. Candles flicker, though no one lit them. You sense the air moving in slow rhythm, as if the walls themselves breathe. A man in robes stands at the end of the hall. His face is half shadow, half memory. He does not speak, only gestures toward a desk of black wood covered in scrolls. You approach. On one scroll, a family tree spreads across vellum like veins across skin. Names branch outward: disciples, apostles, martyrs. But then, near the center, the ink stops. The line breaks. You look closer. A faint trace of erased letters lingers beneath the surface, visible only under the candle's trembling light. You recognize the marks. Hebrew first, then Latin over it, as if one tongue had tried to bury another. The name has been scraped away so carefully that the parchment itself sighs. You whisper, "Who was she?" The man does not answer. Instead, he reaches beneath the desk and pulls out a small vial sealed with red wax. Inside floats a strand of hair, golden and faint. "This is all that remains of the lineage," he says quietly. The rest was made to vanish. The scroll trembles under your fingertips. You can feel something alive inside the ink. Memory refusing to die. You remember fragments from forbidden texts, the Gospels that never reached the altar. The Gospel of Philip, speaking of the companion, the one Christ loved more than the others, the one he kissed often. The church taught you to read that as metaphor, but the erased name on this scroll makes metaphor bleed into flesh. The missing branch was not symbolic, it was biological. You trace the faint mark again and notice that every erased letter forms a rhythm, like musical notes repeating under breath. M-A-R-I. The rest gone, but enough to know. You see the pattern now. The silence was intentional. Each generation of scribes copying the same story, removing the same trace, ensuring that the holy could never be human. The man in robes speaks again, almost to himself. The bloodline could not be killed, only forgotten. We are its keepers, but even we have lost the full record. Only fragments remain, scattered through art and rumor. If you follow them, you will find the truth, Rome sealed. He slides the scroll toward you. The wax of the candle drips onto its corner, sealing your fingerprint into history. You lift the parchment and feel time shift. Behind your eyes, visions flicker. Women hiding children in mountain caves, monks burying letters beneath altar stones, painters leaving clues in the curve of a brushstroke. You see blood passed hand to hand, name to name, hidden beneath the robe of faith. The man extinguishes the candle. The room plunges into darkness, but the scroll glows faintly, the erased letters pulsing with light. The Vatican believes the divine left no heir, he says, but we know otherwise. The word became flesh, flesh became blood, and blood remembers. You ask him where the other half of the genealogy lies. In France, he answers, in the soil of a town the church pretends does not exist, Rennes-le-Château. The priest who served there found a parchment like this one. He died before he could speak. His eyes catch yours. If you continue, you will not return unchanged. The line does not like being disturbed. It dreams through those who touch it. You nod. He opens another door, hidden behind the wall itself. Cold air spills out. You step through. The corridor slopes downward, spiraling like a serpent's spine. The scroll glows brighter in your hand. On the walls, Latin prayers twist into symbols you do not recognize. Circles within circles, triangles nested in roses, the geometry of forbidden remembrance. You reach a chamber where a marble slab rests in the center, carved with words too old for translation. The scroll quivers. The letters bloom like wounds reopening. You see now the full phrase that was erased. Maria sang realis. Mary of the royal blood. Not Magdalene the penitent, Magdalene the mother. The realization hits you not as thought, but as pulse. Everything the church built was to hide that blood still flows. The holy was never meant to be distant. It was born, it breathed, it continued. The slab cracks under your hand. A whisper escapes, older than language. Find the child. You stumble back, clutching the scroll. The man in robes is gone. The door behind you has sealed. The only light is from the words themselves, still glowing softly, like veins remembering their own map. You understand now that the genealogy is not lost. It is alive, waiting for the one who dares to read it aloud. And tonight, it has chosen you. The air hums. Somewhere above, bells toll midnight. The sound vibrates through the stone like heartbeat. You walk toward it, scroll in hand, knowing that with every step you are walking deeper into memory. The lineage breathes again. The first time you see her face, it is hidden beneath pigment and centuries of lies. A fresco inside a small chapel on the outskirts of Avignon, its colors dimmed by candle smoke. The guidebook calls her anonymous saint, but the tilt of her head, the softness of her gaze, the thin red line painted across her veil, none of it fits the canon. You move closer. The red is not decoration, it is code. Crimson veil, the mark of those who carried the blood. You touch the edge of the fresco and the dust feels warm, as if the wall still remembers the hand that painted it. The pigment under your fingertips glows faintly, and you see the brushstrokes align into hidden letters. MM, intertwined. The painter knew. You close your eyes, and the chapel dissolves. You stand in another time, where torches burn and the air smells of myrrh and olive oil. A woman walks across the courtyard, carrying a jar of ointment. Her robe is dark, her veil the color of dried rose petals. She moves with purpose, not shame. Around her, disciples whisper, afraid to be seen beside her. She does not flinch. She knows she carries something none of them can destroy. You realize you are watching memory itself. She kneels before a child sleeping in a wooden cradle. Her hand trembles as she traces the sign of a spiral on the child's forehead. The symbol you saw in the Vatican scroll. She whispers words you cannot understand, yet they vibrate through you like a forgotten song. Then the vision fades. The fresco returns. But now you notice more, an angel painted behind her. One wing red, the other white. The same duality that haunted the codices of the silence. You hear footsteps. The curator enters, unaware of what you've seen. She tells you the fresco was restored 5 years ago, during which an earlier layer of paint was discovered underneath. We covered it again, she says casually. The figure beneath was too damaged to preserve. You ask what it looked like. She hesitates. A woman holding a child. The curator leaves. The chapel grows quiet again. You sit in the pew and open your notebook. Inside are sketches of symbols you've gathered. Spirals, lilies, chalices. Each one now points back to her. The crimson veil appears across centuries. In mosaics, in altarpieces, in glass windows where light bends through red like liquid. Always the same expression, grief and serenity entwined. You travel to Florence. There, in the Uffizi, you find her again, painted by Botticelli in the corner of a larger scene. To the ordinary viewer, she is a servant, but her eyes meet yours across time, calm and defiant. The museum lights flicker. For a moment, her painted lips seem to move. You lean closer and hear it, not sound, but vibration, faint as breath. We carried the word. That night, you cannot sleep. You walk the streets until dawn, her words echoing like prayer. In every reflection, windows, puddles, marble, you see the veil flicker, crimson like dawn. Days later, you arrive in southern France, following the coordinates scribbled on the back of the Vatican scroll. A small village surrounded by vineyards. An old chapel locked with rusted chains. You break them easily. Inside, dust motes swirl in shafts of sunlight. On the altar lies a stone tablet covered in script. You brush the dust away and read, Sanguis non perit, the blood does not perish. Beneath it, carved deeper, another line almost invisible. Mariam conservat lumen. Mary preserves the light. You kneel before the altar. The same hum you felt in the Vatican returns, resonating through the stone floor. The air thickens, warm and alive. For a heartbeat, you feel another presence beside you, a woman's shadow cast in candlelight. She looks at you not as ghost, but as memory. She speaks without moving her lips. They turned love into sin. They turned womb into wound. But the blood remembers. You reach for her hand, but she dissolves into dust and gold. The hum fades. When you rise, a small object lies on the altar where she stood. A ring, simple iron, inscribed with a spiral inside the band. You slide it onto your finger. The metal feels warm, almost breathing. You know what it means now. The crimson veil was never about mourning. It was a covenant, blood made visible, lineage acknowledged in secret. Every woman who wore it carried a fragment of that light forward. When one fell, another rose. You leave the chapel as night descends. The wind carries the scent of rain and myrrh. Behind you, the altar glows faintly, the script pulsing like a heartbeat. The road ahead curves toward the mountains. Somewhere beyond them lies the Abbey of the Red Lily, the next clue whispered in the Vatican archive. But before you go, you look once more at the crimson horizon and whisper her name, no longer erased, Mary, the keeper of the living word. The silence answers with the sound of distant bells, 12 tolls, then one, as if time itself is counting. You walk on, the ring warm against your skin, the memory of the crimson veil burning behind your eyes. The blood moves again. The valley smells of salt and sun. The wind carries the song of cicadas and the faint ringing of distant bells. You walk among olive trees that have lived longer than memory, their twisted trunks glistening with sap like veins beneath skin. The ground here feels sacred, though no one calls it that anymore. At the heart of the grove stands a stone well, half collapsed and covered in moss. The locals say it was built by shepherds, but carved into the rim are symbols too precise, too deliberate, spirals intertwined with lilies, and beneath them, 2 letters worn almost smooth, C and M, Christos and Mariam. You kneel beside the well. When your hand brushes the stone, warmth moves through your fingertips. A hum begins, faint but steady, as if the earth itself remembers. You close your eyes, and the air shifts. The present peels away. Now you stand beneath the same trees, but they are young, their leaves silver under moonlight. Torches burn along a narrow path leading to the well. 2 figures stand there, cloaked in white, their faces hidden by veils of linen. Around them, 12 others keep watch in silence. You can feel it before you see it. Love so pure, it frightens heaven. The man lifts his hand and touches the woman's cheek. No crown, no scripture, only a ring of olive wood that he slides onto her finger. The woman trembles, not in fear, but in recognition. The priest between them does not speak in Latin, but in Aramaic. His words simple. Human, what has been spoken in spirit is now bound in blood. When the man leans forward, his lips touch hers with reverence, not passion. And in that moment, the air glows faintly, an aura of gold trembling between them. The others bow their heads. It is not ceremony, it is covenant. You feel your own heart beating faster, as if you were among them, breathing the same air. The olive trees shimmer. The well fills itself with light. Then the vision fades. You open your eyes to find the grove silent again, the well dry, the moon high. You take out the Vatican scroll and unroll it. On the margin, new ink bleeds where before there was none. The marriage beneath the olive tree sealed the word in flesh. You whisper to the wind, they were wed. The branches sway as if answering. A figure approaches from the dark, an old woman, hunched but steady. She carries a lantern and wears a small pendant shaped like a spiral. Her eyes glint like embers. You've seen it, she says softly. You nod. They tried to erase that night, she continues. Said it was myth, said it was sin, but our mothers remembered. Every olive pressed for oil in this valley was blessed for her. Every child born under its shadow carries a fragment of that vow. You ask her how she knows. She smiles, showing teeth like old ivory. I am the daughter of the keeper. The vow was never broken, only hidden. From her pocket she draws a strip of parchment. On it, faint symbols, the same that lined the Vatican corridor. This, she says, handing it to you, is the echo of their union, the last verse of the gospel that spoke of it. They called it the Song of the Tree. The church burned the rest. You hold the fragment up to the lantern. The letters shimmer, rearranging themselves until you can read. Where spirit meets flesh, the seed shall remember. The wind rises. Olive leaves swirl around you. The old woman steps back. "Follow the river to the east," she whispers. "There you will find the monastery where the child was hidden." Before you can speak, she is gone. The lantern extinguishes itself. The grove returns to darkness. You walk toward the river, guided only by the sound of running water. Moonlight reflects off the current like veins of mercury. The fragment hums in your hand, its rhythm matching your pulse. You reach a bridge of stone and cross it slowly. The night air smells of rain. Far ahead, a cluster of ruins rests against the hillside, arches broken, walls collapsed, but still humming faintly, alive with memory. You step inside. The floor is covered in mosaics, stars, serpents, and a single crimson flower blooming from the center. Beneath it, faint script etched in Greek. Love, written in blood, is not mortal. You sit before it, letting the silence fill you. In the distance, the first light of dawn touches the hills. The world feels new again, as if something long buried is rising through the soil. Somewhere beyond the valley, you know, the church is still guarding the lie. But here, beneath the olive trees, truth still breathes. The marriage was not myth. It was the beginning of a lineage, a bridge between heaven and earth. You touch the mosaic one last time. The crimson flower glows faintly beneath your hand. The blood remembers. You arrive at dawn. The sky is pale gold, the air thick with mist. The monastery sits on the cliff's edge, its towers half swallowed by fog. The gate bears no cross, only a spiral carved deep into the wood. Inside, silence rules. Dust lies thick on pews, candles burn down to nubs. You light one. The flame flickers uncertainly, as if afraid to be seen. The scroll fragment from the olive grove trembles in your pocket. You place it on the altar. Instantly, the flame steadies. A low hum begins, rising from the stone beneath your feet. You follow it through a side corridor to a door sealed with wax. The seal bears the same spiral symbol. You press your hand to it. The wax melts. The door opens. Beyond it lies a small chamber carved into the mountain. The air is warm and still. On the far wall, a fresco glows faintly with its own light. You step closer. It shows a woman holding a child, not the serene Madonna of church paintings, but something older, wilder. Her eyes burn like suns. The child in her arms is radiant, haloed, not with gold, but with white fire. You feel the air thicken. The fresco moves. The child turns his gaze toward you. You freeze. The voice that fills the room is soft. Neither male nor female, neither old nor young. The child was not myth, it says. He was the echo of both, the mortal and the divine. You can barely breathe. Where did he go? The voice answers. Nowhere. He became the many. The fresco shimmers. The paint melts into mist. You see visions, villages lit by torchlight, children with strange marks on their palms, shepherds bowing as they pass. The lineage continued in silence, scattered across continents, hidden beneath new names. Then the vision changes. You see a procession of monks descending into the earth, carrying a small casket bound in silver. They speak a single phrase in unison. Custodi lucem, guard the light. The casket is sealed inside a crypt beneath this very monastery. You know it before the image fades. You find the stairs behind the altar, narrow, spiraling downward into the dark. The air grows colder with each step. You count your breaths. 1, 2. Then the hum returns, deep and steady. At the bottom lies a chamber bathed in faint blue light. The casket rests on a stone pedestal, untouched by dust or decay. Symbols carved around it pulse faintly, like a heartbeat slowed by centuries. You reach out. The metal is warm. The voice returns, closer now, as if inside your mind. He was never meant to rule. He was meant to remember. You lift the lid. Inside lies not a body, but a small sphere of light hovering above folded cloth. It beats softly, alive. The cloth bears a faint stain, crimson turned to gold. You whisper, "Blood." The light pulses in answer. It enters your chest before you can resist, sinking through skin like breath through water. For a moment, your vision bursts open. Stars, galaxies, faces overlapping through time. You see the child again, older now, walking among fishermen, poets, rebels. He smiles and vanishes into them, each one carrying a fragment of his essence. The voice speaks once more. The light became human. It walks still. You fall to your knees, trembling. The sphere's warmth lingers in your ribs, pulsing like an extra heartbeat. You understand now. This is why the church erased the story. Divinity was never a single being. It was inheritance, transmission. You rise slowly. The casket closes itself. The light fades, leaving only the sound of dripping water and the faint echo of a heartbeat that may or may not be yours. As you ascend the stairs, dawn breaks fully. The monastery's bells begin to ring, though no one pulls the ropes. The sound is not metallic but living, each toll vibrating through your bones. You step outside. The valley below glows with mist, and the olive trees shimmer faintly, their leaves catching the morning light like mirrors. You know now that the bloodline did not end with one child or one century. It continued, unseen, across ages. Artists, wanderers, healers, all carrying the same spark that once slept beneath the olive trees. The Vatican tried to erase it because it could not control it, because if the holy could be born again in anyone, power would crumble. You look toward the horizon. Somewhere, bells ring again, softer this time, almost kind. You whisper to the wind, "The child is still alive, in all of us." The hum in your chest answers. The light has chosen its next vessel. You. Rain follows you into the mountains. The sky hangs low, grey and watchful, the air heavy with the scent of wet stone and pine. The scroll in your pack hums faintly, as if aware of where you're going. You walk a narrow trail that winds through mist and memory, and every step feels older than your body, as though someone else has walked it before you, many times, with the same purpose, carrying the same secret. The monastery is far behind now. What lies ahead is older, unmarked on any modern map. A ruin carved into the mountainside, its entrance hidden behind a curtain of vines. When you push them aside, the air that greets you is warm and dry, untouched by centuries. You light your lantern. The walls glisten as if made from bone. Symbols cover every surface, spirals, lilies, stars. You recognize them now as fragments of a language you've been learning without realizing it. The bloodline had its own tongue, one spoken through shapes and resonance, through gesture and color. Not meant for preaching, only remembering. You walk deeper. The tunnel narrows until you have to crouch, the ceiling pressing close to your back. The sound of dripping water echoes like a heartbeat. Then, suddenly, the path opens into a chamber. A pool sits in the center, perfectly still, reflecting the lantern's light like glass. You kneel beside it. The surface ripples once, twice, then stills again. Beneath it, faint red glows pulse like veins under skin. The water smells faintly of iron. You know what it is before the thought forms. Blood, but not decay, not death, preservation. The kind of blood that does not die. You dip your finger into it. The surface shivers. For a moment, your reflection changes. Not your face, but dozens of others, overlapping, dissolving, reforming. faces of men and women across centuries, all carrying the same eyes, the same pulse. You realize this is no ordinary relic. It is a living record, the biological memory of a lineage that has outlived persecution, burning, and denial. Each drop a vessel of continuity. A voice rises from the water, low and calm. Do you see now why they feared us? You don't turn. The voice is within you, speaking from the marrow of your bones. The church believed that killing bodies would end belief, it says. But blood is older than doctrine. It remembers before it understands. You ask what you are meant to do with it. Remember, the voice answers, and carry it. The pool's glow intensifies. The chamber walls begin to hum. You feel warmth spreading through your body, radiating from your heart outward, an echo of something awakening. The light climbs up your arms, illuminating veins that shimmer, faintly gold. You understand. You are becoming part of the continuity. The hum fades. You open your eyes. The pool is calm again, lifeless now, its glow spent. You rise slowly, unsure whether what happened was real or revelation, but your hands are trembling, alive with faint warmth. When you step outside, the rain has stopped. The sky is open and bright. Below you, valleys stretch into the horizon, and in the distance you see the ruins of a Roman road, cutting through fields like an old scar. You follow it. Hours later, you reach a small village where an old chapel leans at the edge of the river. The door creaks when you push it open. Inside, the walls are lined with faded icons, saints, angels, martyrs, all male. But above the altar, painted so faintly it's nearly invisible, is the image of a woman holding a vessel. Her robe, once crimson, now pale from time. Her eyes look downward, sorrowful yet calm. At her feet, someone has scratched a phrase into the plaster, sanguis non dormiat. The blood does not sleep. You light a candle and place it before her. The flame bends sideways, though no wind stirs. For an instant, the woman's eyes lift. You see recognition there, not of you, but of what you now carry. A shiver moves through you. You understand now that death was never the enemy. Forgetting was. The Vatican burned scrolls, buried tombs, silenced witnesses, not to destroy truth, but to sterilize memory, to ensure that holiness stayed in their hands. Yet here, in a forgotten chapel, the truth watches from behind paint and plaster, patient as time. You leave the candle burning. When you step outside, dawn breaks. The light catches on the river, and for a moment, the water runs red. You whisper, the blood remembers. And somewhere deep beneath the earth, the pool answers. You reach Rome at dusk. The city glows with artificial light, but beneath it, the ancient stones still hum with older rhythms. You walk through narrow streets, following the same path that pilgrims once took toward the heart of power. The Vatican rises ahead, like a fortress of marble and gold. To the ordinary eye, it's faith made visible. But you've learned to see what hides in plain sight. The guards at the gates do not stop you. You move as if guided by invisible hands. The scroll in your coat vibrates gently, leading you through the courtyards, under arches, down a stairwell known only to those who remember the original blueprints. Beneath the basilica lies a door of black iron. Symbols are etched into its surface, almost identical to those you saw beneath the olive grove. You press your palm to them. They warm beneath your skin. The door unlocks without a sound. You step into darkness. The air smells of parchment and candle smoke. A single lantern burns in the distance. Around it sit 12 figures in shadow, robed, their faces hidden by veils. You realize where you are, the hidden chamber of the Council of Silence. The Vatican denies its existence, but every century, when knowledge threatens control, they gather here to decide what the world may never know. The tallest figure speaks first. His voice is smooth, like a blade moving through water. Another seeker enters the archive. You do not answer. He continues. We have watched you. You've uncovered fragments of a lineage best left buried. You ask why it must remain hidden. The council murmurs. One voice, female, replies. Because belief is fragile. Humanity cannot bear a God who bleeds. You take a step forward. But he did bleed, and that blood still lives. The room grows tense. The lantern flickers. For a moment, their faces are visible. Old, young, male, female, all marked by the same faint spiral at the temple. You realize with shock that they too are descendants. Guardians of the very truth they suppress. The tallest figure lowers his head. You think we protect the church from the truth, he says, but we protect the truth from the church. You stare at him. Then why erase it? Because power cannot coexist with equality, another whispers. If all are vessels of divinity, there can be no hierarchy, no obedience. Faith would become freedom. The words hang in the air like smoke. You feel the truth in them. A younger member rises, his voice trembling with conviction. But the time is changing. The signs have returned. The blood moves again. The council stirs. Whispers ripple. The elder at the center slams his hand against the table. Silence. The covenant forbids exposure. You step closer, your pulse steady. You can't silence what is already awake. The bloodline has endured every sword, every fire, every rewriting of scripture. It cannot die. The elder's eyes narrow. And what would you have us do? Announce that God's lineage walks among men? That salvation was never meant to be exclusive? You would undo the very structure that holds civilization together. Maybe it needs to be undone, you say quietly. The lantern flares, its light filling the chamber. The figures recoil. The air vibrates, the hum you felt beneath the olive trees returning stronger now, rising through the floor, through your spine, through every stone of the Vatican above. Books fall from shelves. The table trembles. The symbols on the walls ignite in gold. The elder shouts, "You've awakened it!" The hum becomes a pulse, not sound, but resonance, memory unfolding. The faces around you blur into dozens more, generations upon generations, all watching. You hear the voice from the pool again. The blood remembers. The council falls silent. One by one, the figures remove their veils. Tears glisten on their cheeks. The eldest whispers, "Perhaps the time has come." He turns to you. "You are not the first to find us, but you may be the last. Take what we cannot reveal." He slides a small box across the table. Inside lies a silver ring identical to the one you found in France. The same spiral carved within. You put it on. It fits perfectly. The elder nods. You are now witness. The bloodline moves through you. Before you can reply, the lantern extinguishes. Darkness folds around you. When light returns, the chamber is empty. The door behind you stands open. You step back into the basilica. Tourists murmur above, unaware that the foundation beneath them just shifted. You walk out into the night. The bells begin to ring, slow and solemn. The city hums with life, but beneath it, you can feel another rhythm, older, deeper, alive. The Council of Silence still exists, but tonight, its silence has cracked. And in the spaces between those bells, the bloodline breathes again. It begins with the echo of a stamp, heavy, deliberate, final. Wax meeting parchment, the sound of history being sealed away. You stand in a dim archive beneath the apostolic palace, where air never moves and candles seem afraid to flicker. The room smells of dust, iron, and sanctified decay. The archivist who led you here has disappeared. Only the faint light of your lantern remains, trembling against rows of forgotten documents. You find the shelf labeled Sigillum obscurum, the seal of darkness. Behind it, scrolls bound in crimson ribbon. You untie one, careful not to break the fragile wax medallion pressed into its spine. The impression is unmistakable, the papal tiara above two crossed keys. Around it, a phrase in Latin, Oblivione servatur fides, faith preserved through forgetting. The words chill you. The parchment unrolls reluctantly, as if unwilling to be read. Inside are decrees from an unnamed pope, centuries old, describing an order to purge heresies of blood. You skim the lines, mentions of unnamed women, of children born from unholy unions, of records to be sanctified by absence. The Vatican didn't just suppress the lineage, it sanctified its erasure. Forgetting became doctrine. You read further. Each line describes acts hidden beneath the language of holiness. The names shall be blessed through deletion. Let every likeness be cleansed by pigment. Let blood be holy by being unspoken. A system, precise and relentless. You realize it wasn't merely censorship. It was ritual. The church didn't just rewrite history. It reconsecrated the void left behind. You glance around the archive. The walls seem to pulse faintly, the paint rippling like old skin. For a moment, you think you hear chanting. Soft, distant, echoing from corridors you cannot see. You follow the sound. It leads to a narrow passage, ending in a door made of marble, carved with 12 identical seals. The center one bears the same phrase as the parchment. You touch it, and the door warms beneath your palm. The locks disengage with a sound like a sigh. Inside is a small chamber, a single table, a single chair. On the table, a metal box bound in silver thread. You open it. Inside are hundreds of tiny discs, papal seals melted and recast into rings, pendants, even rosary beads. Each one a fragment of authority, each one carrying the same design. A double spiral, the mark of the bloodline inverted. They turned the memory of the sacred into symbols of obedience. As you lift one of the rings, the air shimmers. The room begins to fade, replaced by another, the Vatican of centuries past. You see the Pope himself, seated in the same chair, candlelight burning behind him like a halo of fire. His eyes are weary, his hands trembling as he signs the decree. Beside him, a younger priest reads aloud, "To preserve the faith, we must erase the flesh that bore it." The Pope hesitates. His voice cracks. "Forgive me," he whispers, not to God, but to someone unseen. Then he presses the seal into wax. The act burns through time. The vision dissolves. You stand again in the archive, the box of melted seals glowing faintly as if still hot. You can feel the residue of every erased name humming within them. You whisper, "You didn't destroy the bloodline. You imprisoned it." The walls seem to listen. The air tightens. The candle flames elongate. Somewhere far above, a bell tolls, though it is not the hour. You gather one seal into your hand. The metal feels alive. As your fingers close around it, you feel an image pulse into your mind. A corridor beneath the Sistine Chapel, lined with frescoes older than Michelangelo's. Hidden there lies the book of the unwritten names, the index of every soul erased under papal decree. You leave the chamber. Your footsteps echo like whispers repeating themselves. When you glance back, the door has sealed again, and the passage beyond it has vanished. Outside, night has fallen over Rome. The city hums with life, but you walk unseen through its veins. You can still feel the weight of the seal in your hand, heavy as guilt. The Latin phrase repeats in your head, "Oblivione servatur fides," faith preserved through forgetting. But what if remembering is the only true faith left? You look towards St. Peter's Dome. Lightning flashes behind it. The sky divides like parchment torn open. For a heartbeat, you imagine the dome not as a sanctuary, but as a vault. And within it, the truth waits, trembling, ready to be spoken again. You tighten your grip on the seal. "No more silence," you whisper. And somewhere deep beneath the Vatican, a lock begins to turn. You find them first in brushstrokes, hidden in folds of drapery, in glances exchanged between saints, in the background of altarpieces where no one ever looks. The painters knew. Florence, 1492. You stand in the Uffizi, surrounded by colour that still breathes. Botticelli's mystic nativity glows under the soft museum light, and though the tourists pass by without noticing, you see it. The woman standing just behind the Virgin. She wears no halo, no crown, only a faint crimson ribbon binding her hair. Her gaze is not on the Christ child, but on you. You move closer. In her eyes, tiny reflections of stars. 7 of them, arranged in a circle. You count. 7, the symbol of the lineage, the 7 surviving bloodlines descending from the union beneath the olive tree. You remember what the archivist once whispered. Art became the last gospel. Every stroke of pigment was rebellion disguised as beauty. Every saint painted twice, once for heaven, once for remembrance. You travel to Milan next. The Last Supper. You stand in front of Da Vinci's wall, the room still and heavy. To everyone else, it is a masterpiece of perspective. To you, it is code. Look closer, at the hand reaching for the chalice, at the space between Christ and the figure beside him. She, not he, leans away slightly, her expression calm, knowing. The feminine energy vibrates from the pigment. It is Mary, not a disciple. The silence between them is not absence. It is intimacy turned into geometry. Da Vinci painted it that way for a reason. The V shape between them forms a chalice, the same symbol found in the Bloodline's texts, the vessel of continuity. You imagine him working late at night, whispering prayers not to saints but to memory. Each brushstroke a confession, each line a defiance. But he was not alone. Across Europe, the same secret bloomed like a hidden vine. In Spain, Murillo's Magdalene in ecstasy. In France, a fresco within Chartres Cathedral, depicting a woman beneath Christ's feet, light spilling from her palms. And in Rome, a painting attributed to Caravaggio, locked away from the public eye, its title erased from records. You manage to see it through an archivist's favor, a dark room lit by one hanging lamp. The painting shows a woman seated before a mirror. Behind her, a man's hand rests on her shoulder. The reflection shows something different, the same woman, older, holding a child. Caravaggio's rebellion wasn't subtle. He encoded the forbidden genealogy directly into the reflection. He painted the invisible truth of succession. The curator whispers beside you. They ordered this piece destroyed, but someone hid it. Perhaps he knew. You ask, knew what? That art would outlive obedience. The light trembles. You step closer. The brushwork seems alive, almost pulsing. The child in the mirror meets your gaze. For a fleeting second, his eyes flash gold. You step back, shaken. The air thickens with something holy, something ancient. The curator touches your arm. You understand now why artists were excommunicated, imprisoned, murdered. They remembered what priests tried to forget. The divine was not confined to scripture. It was carried in pigment and silence. You nod. You can feel the same hum you felt beneath the Vatican rising within you again. That night, you walk through Rome's narrow alleys. The walls are painted with layers of forgotten saints, their halos chipped, their faces blurred. You pass one fresco too damaged to recognize. Yet beneath the erosion, a familiar spiral emerges, drawn faintly into the plaster, the symbol of the bloodline. You reach up and trace it. The wall warms beneath your fingers. Suddenly, visions flood your mind. Ateliers lit by candlelight, painters murmuring prayers as they work, each one embedding the truth into their creations. You see their faces, men, women, apprentices. The lineage moved through their hands. Even when they signed their names, they signed hers. You realize something profound. The bloodline didn't only survive through bodies, but through art. The sacred continued in paint, in canvas, in color. Every masterpiece you've ever seen might be part of an unbroken gospel, hidden in plain sight. You whisper to the night. You painted her into eternity. The wind answers, with a rustle like the turning of old pages. Before dawn, you visit one last place, a forgotten chapel on the edge of the Tiber. Its frescoes have peeled away, but one remains intact. A woman standing at the river, her veil crimson, her reflection shining like gold. Beneath her feet, faint words appear as the morning light enters through the cracked window. Sanguine pictum est veritas. Truth is painted in blood. You stay there until the sun rises fully. The colors of the fresco shimmer, coming alive under light. You realize the veil's red was once brighter, the hue of living blood. The painters remembered what the priests could not. That memory is stronger than dogma. That beauty can hide rebellion. That every image of a woman kneeling was not submission, but survival. You leave the chapel as the city awakens. The streets glisten after rain, and the light feels different now, as if each reflection carries her face, watching through time. The painters are long gone, their bones dust beneath cathedral floors. But their work endures, whispering across centuries the same forbidden gospel. The holy blood never vanished. It learned to paint. The entrance is hidden behind the marble steps of the Sistine Chapel, a doorway that should not exist. You find it by accident, though part of you knows there are no accidents left. The seal from the archive hums in your pocket as if guiding you. A pulse that grows stronger each time you pass a fresco depicting judgment or heaven. The tourists above shuffle and whisper, their cameras flashing against Michelangelo's ceiling, oblivious to what lies beneath their feet. You move quietly, blending with the crowd, until you slip through a narrow corridor meant for maintenance staff. The door at its end is locked, but the spiral engraved into the wood matches the symbol on your ring. When you press it against the carving, the lock releases with a soft sigh. Inside, darkness. The air is cooler, thicker, alive with the smell of stone and ancient wax. You descend a spiral staircase that seems to fall endlessly, the sound of your steps swallowed whole. Your lantern flickers, as if afraid. At last, the stairs open into a vast chamber, a chapel that predates the one above it. The walls shimmer faintly with moisture, the ceiling low and curved. It feels less like architecture and more like the inside of a ribcage. You realize you are standing inside something that was once alive. A structure grown, not built. At the far end, a single altar. No crucifix, no saint, only two empty thrones carved from the same stone, facing each other across a narrow gap. Between them stands a single pillar, engraved with spirals intertwining, male and female, sun and moon, heaven and flesh. You approach. The air vibrates softly, the same resonance you felt at the monastery and beneath the olive grove. It feels like standing inside a heartbeat. You kneel before the pillar. The surface is cold, but when you touch it, warmth floods through you, a pulse, slow and deep. The engravings shift beneath your fingers. The spirals beginning to move, spinning around each other like threads of living light. Then the vision comes. The chamber is full of people, monks, cardinals, artists, all gathered around the same pillar centuries ago. Torches burn, casting shadows that dance like spirits. At the center, a man in white robes stands between the two thrones. His face is pale, his hands trembling. You recognize him from frescoes, a Renaissance pope. He looks to the pillar and says, "Let it be sealed. Let it be forgotten." But another figure steps forward, a woman cloaked in crimson, her face hidden. "You cannot seal what was divine," she says, her voice calm, firm. "You only delay its return." The Pope hesitates. His eyes betray fear, not of her, but of what she represents. A truth older than his church. The vision shatters. You are alone again. The chamber is silent. But on the altar, you notice something you hadn't before. A crack running down the center between the thrones. Inside it, faint light glows, pulsing like breath. You reach in. Your fingers close around something small and cold. A medallion. When you lift it into the lantern's glow, you see the same intertwined spirals engraved into its surface, but now joined by a single tear-shaped symbol between them. You hold it to your chest, and the hum inside you aligns with it, resonant, whole. For a moment, you see them, the two figures who once sat upon these thrones, not king and queen, not priest and disciple, but equals, partners in creation, one carrying word, the other blood. Together, the balance that frightened empires. A whisper fills the chamber. Two thrones, one light. The glow fades. You slip the medallion into your pocket. As you leave, you notice faint frescoes along the walls, not scenes of heaven or hell, but of birth, of union, of stars falling into the earth. The paint is nearly gone, but one figure remains clear. A woman with open arms, light pouring from her chest, surrounded by 12 rings of fire. Beneath her, carved words, sanguis lumen est. Blood is light. You ascend the staircase, the hum still in your bones. When you emerge into the Vatican's corridors again, the air feels wrong. Too bright, too false. The tourists move like ghosts. The guides speak of judgment and creation, never knowing the other story buried beneath their feet. As you step into the courtyard, you look back toward the dome. It no longer seems a symbol of heaven. It looks like a lid. You whisper, you sealed it, but it still breathes. And deep below, the chapel of shadows stirs. Rain falls across Rome like ash. The Tiber runs dark and swollen, carrying leaves, petals, and fragments of paper. Pages torn from a book you once read, perhaps, or one yet to be written. The medallion around your neck feels heavier than gold. Every church bell tolls offbeat, as if echoing an invisible rhythm that only you can hear. You walk through alleys where saints once stood painted on walls. Now their faces are fading, their eyes eaten away by time. The crimson veils, the spirals, the lilies, all disappearing. The church has begun its cleansing again. At first, you think it coincidence. But in every chapel, every monastery, the pattern repeats. Restoration projects that erase, paint scraped, frescoes sealed under plaster. As if an invisible hand is retracing the Vatican's centuries-old decree, Oblivione servitur fides, faith preserved through forgetting. You travel north to Florence. The Uffizi has closed an entire wing for renovation. You slip inside at night through a broken window. The corridors are dark except for floodlights illuminating fragments of stripped walls. The mystic nativity is gone. So is Magdalene in ecstasy. Only pale rectangles remain, ghosts of what once was. You kneel before one. Faint traces of red pigment glimmer in the light, the remnants of a veil. You touch it gently, and for a moment, warmth passes through your skin, the same pulse that has followed you since the beginning. The pigment is alive, refusing to vanish completely. You whisper, "You can't kill color." A voice answers from behind you. "No, but you can hide it." You turn. An elderly man stands in the doorway, his eyes sharp, his suit worn. He carries a folder under his arm marked Opus Purificatio. He smiles faintly. "You're not the first to chase the ghosts." You ask who he is. "Conservator," he says, "but not of art, of silence." He opens the folder. Inside are photographs, frescoes before and after restoration. In each after, the same detail has been removed: the spiral, the crimson, the woman. The church funds the projects, he says. They call it preservation, but really, it's burial. They're rewriting light itself. You stare at the photos. Why tell me? He shrugs. Because even silence grows tired. He hands you one last image. A fresco, newly uncovered in a chapel outside Avignon. It shows two figures walking hand in hand beneath an olive tree. Above them, 7 stars burn in the night sky. But the next photograph shows only sky, the figures painted over. The restoration was completed 3 weeks ago, he says. But look closely at the plaster. You do. The surface looks ordinary, until the light hits at an angle. Then you see it. Faint gold veins running beneath the paint, forming a shape that cannot be erased. The spiral. Pigment can vanish, the man says. But memory seeps into the stone. It always does. He closes the folder. You can't fight the church with truth. You fight it with persistence. Before you can respond, he turns and disappears into the corridor, his footsteps fading. You stand alone. The room hums softly, the faint echo of all the vanished images merging into one voice. Remember us. You leave Florence at dawn. The medallion grows warmer with every mile, as if reacting to what's been lost. When you cross the border into France, it pulses once, and a new symbol appears etched faintly along its edge. A lily blooming through a spiral. The bloodline is responding. In Avignon, the chapel from the photograph stands silent, locked and guarded. You break the chain easily. Inside, the air smells of rain and dust. The fresco glows faintly, even under its fresh layer of plaster. You run your fingers across the surface. It hums beneath your touch. You close your eyes. For a moment, the new paint dissolves. You see the original scene beneath. The man and woman under the olive tree, hands entwined, a child sleeping between them. The stars above flicker like heartbeat. Then the vision fades, the plaster grey again, but the warmth remains. You realize something then. The church can erase symbols from stone, from paint, from books, but not from the blood. The lineage itself is the living fresco, the unerasable art. Outside, the rain has stopped. You walk toward the river, where a faint reflection of the chapel shimmers in the water. In it, the fresco still exists, unbroken, untouched. The image preserved by light, not pigment. You understand now. Erasure is illusion. The truth survives in reflection, in resonance, in those who carry it unknowingly. As you leave, a single bell rings from the chapel tower. Its sound ripples through the valley like a heartbeat. You feel it in your ribs, steady and defiant. The disappearing symbols are not gone. They've simply moved, from walls to flesh, from paint to pulse. And tonight, they beat again, alive beneath your skin. The sea is a mirror tonight. You stand at its edge, the air cold, the horizon endless. Waves whisper in tongues older than Latin, repeating a secret you've begun to understand. Memory travels like tide, retreating only to return stronger. The boat before you is small, carved from cedar darkened by salt. Its hull bears no cross, no name, only a spiral etched near the prow, the mark that follows you everywhere. The captain waits in silence, face hidden beneath a hood. He gestures for you to board. You climb in. The wood creaks under your weight, alive with its own pulse. The sail catches a wind that smells faintly of incense and brine. The vessel moves without sound, gliding away from the shore of Italy into the night. The captain speaks at last. "This is the same route they took," he says, "when Rome hunted them." You ask, "Who?" "The woman and the child." His voice trembles slightly when he says it, as if speaking the truth itself is dangerous. You stare at the horizon. The moon paints the water in silver veins. The thought feels too large to hold. That somewhere across these same waters, centuries ago, she fled carrying the last thread of the holy blood. He continues, "They came by sea, disguised as traders. The ship carried olive oil, linen, salt, but hidden among the barrels was a cradle." The words sink into you like prophecy remembered. The cradle, the living continuity. The wind shifts. The boat groans softly. You close your eyes and feel the motion of the sea align with the rhythm in your blood. Steady, eternal. You are no longer a passenger. You are repeating a journey engraved in human memory. When you wake, dawn has broken. The coast of Gaul rises before you, cliffs draped in mist, vineyards clinging to the slopes like veins of green. The captain points to a cove where ruins of an old temple sit half buried in sand. "They landed there," he says. "They called it the mouth of the lily." You step onto the shore. The air is cool and sweet. The waves retreat behind you with a sigh. The sand beneath your feet feels warm, as if it remembers the weight of those who came before. The ruins are older than Rome, pillars carved with serpents and stars, the remnants of a pre-Christian goddess cult. You brush the moss from one of the stones and find words in faint Greek, phos ek haimatos, light from blood. Inside the broken temple, a staircase descends into darkness. The walls are carved with spirals, lilies and eyes. You follow it down, lantern in hand, until the passage opens into a small chamber filled with water reflecting the lantern's glow. A voice whispers from the shadows, "You found the cradle." A woman steps forward, wrapped in a cloak the color of dusk. Her eyes are pale, her face familiar though you've never seen her. She carries an oil lamp shaped like a chalice. You ask, "Who are you?" "The keeper," she says simply. "One of many." She kneels beside the pool. Beneath the surface, you see a stone box carved with spirals identical to the medallion you wear. "This is where she hid the relics," the keeper says. "Letters, fragments, a lock of hair. They waited here until we could move them north." You kneel beside her. The air hums softly, alive with the same resonance you followed since Rome. She continues. "They called her Mariam of the Sea. The Romans thought she drowned, but she lived. The fishermen hid her among their families. Her child grew, spoke in tongues no one recognized. When he was old enough, he traveled inland. His blood mixed with theirs. His descendants became shepherds, healers, kings." You ask, why didn't they return? She smiles sadly. Because the world no longer wanted gods that could bleed. You reach into the water and touch the stone box. It opens at your touch. Inside lies a parchment sealed in wax, faint letters visible through the cracks. The keeper nods. "Take it. The lineage must speak again." You lift it carefully. The wax crumbles. The words are written in Aramaic and Greek, a mixture of prayers and memories. You can only read fragments. Flight through water, the womb as covenant, Gaul as refuge. At the bottom, one final line written in Latin, perhaps added later, "Sanguis transit, sed non moritur." The blood passes, but does not die. When you look up, the keeper is gone. Only her lamp remains, its flame steady though no hand holds it. You realize this chamber is not a tomb. It's a heartbeat, a place where history breathes in silence. You rise, carrying the parchment. When you step back into daylight, the sea is calm again, the horizon gold with dawn. The boat and its captain are gone, but the path inland glows faintly. Vineyards leading toward distant hills. You walk toward them, the scroll warm in your hand. Each step feels like continuation, each breath like repetition of something eternal. The flight to Gaul never ended. It continues, quietly, through you. You reach it at twilight. The abbey stands atop a hill, surrounded by fields of lilies the color of blood. Their scent thickens the air, sweet and heavy. The path leading up is lined with broken statues, angels without faces, saints without hands. The building itself is half in ruin. Arches crumble, ivy coils through windows, bells hang silent. Yet light still glows behind one stained glass window, a single flame among the dark. You push open the doors. The sound echoes through the vast nave like breath in a cathedral of bones. Inside, the air feels suspended, sacred and sorrowful at once. The scent of lilies mixes with old incense and rain. A single nun kneels before the altar, her veil crimson instead of black. When she rises, her face is young, but her eyes ancient. "You've come far," she says, voice quiet but certain. "The sea carried you as it carried her." You realize who she means. The nun gestures toward the altar. "This place was built by her descendants. The lilies bloom red because the soil remembers her tears." You approach the altar. It is carved from stone veined with iron, dark and smooth like dried blood. Upon it rests a book bound in leather, its cover embossed with the spiral and the lily entwined, the same sigil that followed you across continents. The nun opens it gently. Inside are hymns, prayers and drawings, but they are not to the God of Rome. They speak of balance, of union, of creation through love. One line stands out, written in careful Latin. He was the Word, she the breath. Together they made light. You touch the page. It hums faintly under your fingertips, as if the ink itself is alive. The nun watches you. "They called us heretics," she says, "but we were only remembering. Every generation, one daughter is chosen to guard the archive, one son to carry the silence. The church never destroyed us because it never truly saw us." You ask, "What do you guard?" She walks to the far end of the nave and lifts a heavy iron grate in the floor. A staircase spirals downward, carved directly into the stone. "Come." You follow her into the earth. The walls close around you, lit only by her lantern. The descent feels endless until it opens into a chamber glowing with soft red light. In its center stands a glass case containing a single parchment sealed behind wax. The same symbol of the spiral and lily is pressed into it. "This," she says, "is the covenant of the blood." You step closer. Inside the parchment, faint shapes move, veins of red that shift like living threads. The words are written in an alphabet you've never seen, luminous and fluid. "It's alive," you whisper. "It always was," she replies. Every letter was written with her blood. The ink was mixed with oil from the olive trees of the Union. It cannot fade, because it breathes. You stare at it, mesmerized. The letters seem to pulse in rhythm with your own heart. The nun continues. "When the church found this place in the 13th century, it sealed the upper abbey and declared it cursed. But we remained below, guarding this covenant. Those who tried to destroy it lost their voices, for truth cannot be silenced without cost." You look around. The chamber is lined with alcoves containing relics, fragments of fabric, rings, a small carved figure of a woman holding a child. "The lineage scattered," she says, "but pieces of the story survived here, waiting for someone who could hear the blood." You ask her why now, why show it to you. Her gaze softens. "Because the symbols are vanishing, the painters are gone, the words are fading, but you carry the resonance. You are the reminder." You reach toward the glass. "What happens if it's opened?" Her voice lowers. "Then the world remembers, not through faith, but through recognition." You hesitate. "And if it's not ready?" She closes her eyes. "It never is." You place your hand against the glass. The warmth rushes through you instantly, the hum turning to rhythm, rhythm to song. You see visions again, the marriage beneath the olive tree, the flight across the sea, the child growing, teaching, vanishing into history. And then you see faces, artists, monks, queens, peasants, all carrying the same spark. When you pull your hand away, the light within the parchment dims, as if exhaling. The nun whispers, "It knows you now." You ascend the staircase in silence. The lilies outside glow faintly under the rising moon, their red petals shimmering like embers. Before you leave, the nun hands you a small relic, a fragment of the parchment sealed in crystal. "The covenant travels with you," she says. "But remember, revelation is a double-edged prayer. It frees and it burns." You nod. As you walk down the hill, the wind carries the scent of lilies behind you, sharp, sweet, eternal. In the distance, thunder rumbles over the mountains, but you feel no fear. The covenant of the blood hums faintly in your chest, alive and waiting. The abbey of the red lily fades into the night behind you, but its light remains. The lineage moves again. You hear the story first as a whisper between two monks in a tavern on the road to Languedoc. They speak of a brotherhood that did not die with the flames of the Templars, men who carried not gold nor relics, but memory, sealed within their veins. When you ask about them, the monks look away, eyes clouded with superstition. One of them mutters a name that feels like a key, unlocking something ancient. Milites Calicis, the Knights of the Chalice. You travel south, following the trail of forgotten ruins. The land grows wilder here, rivers carving deep scars through limestone, mountains rising like the ribs of sleeping giants. At night, you sleep beneath constellations that mirror symbols you've seen carved in stone. 7 stars, 1 spiral, a lily at their center. The wind carries voices. They sound like prayer. At dawn, you find a fortress half buried in ivy. No one lives here now. The villagers call it cursed. The entrance is guarded by 2 stone lions, their eyes worn smooth by time. You push through the rusted gate and step inside. The courtyard is silent, except for the wind passing through arrow slits. The flagstones are cracked, but one bears a mark you recognize. The intertwined spirals of the lineage. The fortress is older than the Crusades, yet its architecture hums with geometry, a rhythm that mirrors the stars. The corridors are narrow, designed not for defense, but for secrecy. You light your lantern and descend into a crypt beneath the keep. The walls are covered in frescoes, knights kneeling before a chalice that shines like a sun. The chalice itself appears different in each panel, sometimes golden, sometimes stone, sometimes shaped like a heart or a womb. Beneath each painting, the same inscription repeats in Latin, "Non poculum sed sanguis," not a cup, but blood. You realize what the knights were protecting was not an object, but a lineage, the living grail. A door at the far end bears the mark of the spiral, surrounded by 4 stars. When you press your hand against it, the seal you wear warms, and the door opens silently. Inside, you find a circular chamber lined with shields. Each bears a symbol, each name carved beneath long faded. But one shield gleams faintly, untouched by dust. Its sigil, a crimson lily against a field of white. You touch it. The air hums. A figure appears. A man in chainmail, face hidden by shadow. His voice sounds like the echo of memory itself. "You found our circle," he says. You ask, "Were you guarding it?" "We were guarding her," he replies, "and those who came after." He steps closer, light flickering across his armor. "The church accused us of idolatry, of worshipping false gods, but we worshipped memory. We carried her bloodline through wars, through fire, through exile. We hid the truth inside our oaths." You ask about the Grail. He smiles, sad and proud. "The Grail was never stone nor silver. It was flesh. It was womb. It was the vessel through which divinity became human. We took vows not to defend relics, but to defend her descendants. Some of us married into their line, blending our names with theirs. Others died to protect their anonymity. He gestures toward the shield you touched. That one belonged to the last Grand Master, his name erased from every record but one, carved here in stone, for the blood to remember. You see faint letters appear along the rim of the shield, as if inked by invisible hands. Et lumen, in sanguine vivit, and the light lives in the blood. The night's image flickers. We failed them once. Do not let us fail again. Then he vanishes, leaving only the faint scent of iron and incense. You stand alone in the chamber. The hum fades, replaced by the slow dripping of water. You run your fingers along the stone where the knight stood. It feels warm, alive. The walls pulse faintly with the same rhythm that has haunted you since the beginning. When you climb back into the open air, the sun has set. The fortress looms against a violet sky. You look to the west and see the constellation Orion glowing above the mountains, his belt forming the same triangle carved into the crypt's entrance. The stars mirror the geometry below. You whisper to the night. You carried her. The wind shifts, soft and solemn, like an invisible choir answering back. You realize the Knights of the Hidden Grail never vanished. Their oath survived in secret families, in quiet abbeys, in artists who painted forbidden symbols, in women who wore crimson veils without explanation. They became merchants, masons, poets, physicians. The lineage scattered but endured, hidden not by armor, but by ordinariness. As you leave the fortress, you notice something carved above the gate, a spiral inside a circle, newly etched. Someone has been here recently. You touch the carving, the stone hums beneath your palm. The line continues. You smile faintly. The blood moves on. You see her first in shadow, a church on the edge of a small French village. Its doors warped by centuries of weather. The locals call it Notre Dame Noire. They say she protects travelers, though no priest serves her. Inside, the air is thick with candle smoke and silence. You walk down the narrow aisle toward the altar where she stands, the Black Madonna. Her face is carved from dark wood, her features smooth, ageless. In her arms, a child with the same solemn gaze. At first, you think it is simply the product of time, the wood darkened by smoke and touch. But when the light shifts, the truth reveals itself. The blackness is pigment, deliberate, sacred. You bow your head. The air hums softly. Her eyes meet yours. In them, something infinite. Not the cold distance of marble saints, but warmth, maternal, terrifying in its honesty. A woman enters quietly from the side chapel. Her hair is white, her robe grey. She carries a basket of lilies. You came for her, she says. You nod. She's not from here, the woman continues. She came with the refugees from the south. They said she was carved from a tree that bled red sap. The church allowed her only because the people refused to let her go, but they never understood who she was. You ask, who? The woman smiles faintly. The mother of continuity, the hidden one. They called her the Magdalene in secret. She sets the lilies at the statue's feet. Every year the priests tried to replace her with the Virgin of White Stone. Every year the villagers brought her back. They said the dark face held the light better. You stare at the statue. The child's hand rests upon the mother's heart, and beneath it, faint lines are carved into the wood, a spiral surrounded by 7 tiny stars. The woman notices your gaze. The stars mark the daughters, she whispers. 7 carried the blood into 7 lands: France, Spain, Britain, Egypt, Armenia, Judea, and the east beyond the desert. She stands here for all of them. The candles flicker. Shadows ripple across the walls, forming shapes, faces, halos, circles of light. You realize they are not tricks of flame. The chapel itself remembers. You reach toward the statue. The wood feels warm, almost breathing. When you close your eyes, you see her not as sculpture, but alive. She walks through fields of lilies, her veil crimson, her skin dark from the sun. The child at her side glows faintly, eyes golden like dawn. They pass through villages where people bow without knowing why. The mother smiles, places her hand upon their heads, and keeps walking. The vision fades. You open your eyes to find the old woman watching you. She shows herself only to those who still carry her song, she says. The church called her idol, but we called her memory. You ask how long they've kept her here. Since before there was a France, the woman replies. When the Romans came, she was already here. When the Crusaders marched, she remained. When the priests banned her, the women hid her in the wells. The earth protected her. You glance again at the 7 stars carved beneath her child's hand. What happens when they all awaken? The woman's expression softens into awe. Then the silence ends. You step closer. The scent of lilies fills your lungs, thick and sweet. You place your palm upon the statue's heart. The spiral beneath your skin glows faintly in response, echoing the pattern carved in wood. The room fills with sound, low, resonant, like the hum of distant thunder. The candles flare brighter, their flames bending toward her. You hear voices, women chanting in a language without time. The melody rises, pure and ancient, vibrating through your bones. The old woman kneels. She's remembering, she whispers. You've woken her. You feel the air shift. The statue's eyes seem to move, following you. A tear of resin slides down her cheek, glistening in candlelight. It falls onto your hand and burns like warm oil. In that instant, understanding floods through you. The Black Madonna was never about skin, color, or iconography. She was the embodiment of hidden divinity, the union of heaven and earth concealed in plain sight. She was every erased woman, every silenced voice, every fragment of divine memory preserved in maternal form. You whisper, "You never left us." Her lips do not move, but her voice answers within you. I was never gone. I waited in wood and shadow. I waited for blood to remember its light. The vision ends as gently as it began. The air stills, the candles dim. The old woman rises, eyes wet. "You carry her now," she says softly. Every time someone speaks her name without shame, she lives again. Every child born in love is her continuation. Every artist who paints light into darkness is her witness. You leave the chapel before dawn. Outside, the lilies bloom black in the starlight, their petals glistening like obsidian. The wind carries the faint scent of myrrh. When you look back, the statue through the stained glass glows faintly, her halo not golden but crimson. The child in her arms looks upward, as if listening to something only he can hear. You realize the church can rewrite gospels, bury tombs, paint over truth, but it cannot extinguish the feminine divine that lives in every shadow. As you walk away, the horizon begins to lighten. The first rays of dawn spill across the fields of red lilies, turning them to flame. The Black Madonna watches. Her silence is not absence, it is waiting. And somewhere in the distance, a bell rings once, low, resonant, eternal, echoing the heartbeat of the blood that will not die. You travel north along narrow roads that cut through valleys of mist. Every mile feels like a descent into forgetting. The churches become smaller, simpler, wooden crosses instead of marble spires, hymns sung softly behind locked doors. You begin to sense it before you see it, the hush that follows faith when it no longer dares to speak aloud. The Church of Silence is not a building, it is a network of whispers, a communion of those who chose truth over recognition. They gather in crypts, in abandoned monasteries, in the ruins of places that Rome has erased from its maps. No banners, no sermons, no hierarchy. Only the echo of a promise. Remember what they tried to bury. You find their trace in a small village near the border of Spain. The locals call the ruins on the hill La Casa del Viento, the House of Wind. By day, it looks like nothing. A cluster of broken columns and a roof half swallowed by vines. But at night, the air hums differently, as if the stones themselves breathe. You climb the hill after sunset. The moon is a thin blade cutting through clouds. At the top, the ruins glow faintly under its light. You feel the familiar pulse through your ribs, the resonance that follows every revelation. A figure waits near the altar, cloaked, silent. You recognize the spiral embroidered into their sleeve. "You came through the lilies," the figure says. The voice is neither male nor female, but calm, steady. "Then you've already been marked." You nod. "I was told you guard what the church forgot." The figure smiles faintly. "We don't guard, we listen." They gesture toward the broken altar. Beneath it, a narrow stair descends into darkness. "Below lies the sanctuary," they whisper. "The last choir of those who never stopped remembering." You follow them down. The passage smells of myrrh and dust. The steps twist like a spiral into the earth. You hear faint singing, not melody, but vibration, a hum that feels alive. When you reach the chamber, the air shimmers with candlelight. Dozens of people stand in silence, faces hidden by veils of pale linen. Each holds a small object, a ring, a stone, a piece of red fabric. Symbols pass through generations. Their hum grows louder as you enter, harmonizing with your heartbeat. The cloaked guide steps forward. "You walk among the unspoken," they say. "Those who kept the blood's memory through silence. When the church hunted, we hid. When it burned, we buried. When it lied, we learnt the language of absence." You look around. The walls of the chamber are covered in faint carvings. Not words, but patterns. Spirals, lilies, constellations. The same symbols found in frescoes, manuscripts, and relics across centuries. It dawns on you that these people were the connective tissue between every fragment of truth you've uncovered. "Why stay hidden?" you ask. The guide lowers their hood. Their faces lined, eyes luminous in the dim light. "Because truth is not meant to be shouted," they reply. "It's meant to be carried, like blood through the body, quiet, necessary." They lead you deeper into the chamber. In the center stands a circular pool of water, perfectly still, reflecting the ceiling carved with stars. At its edge, 7 candles burn, one for each branch of the lineage. The guide hands you a small vessel of oil. "Light the 8th, they whisper. You hesitate. "There are only 7. They meet your gaze. "The 8th has always been waiting." You pour the oil onto the water's surface. The reflection ripples once, then bursts into faint flame. The room fills with golden light. The hum grows stronger, resonating in your bones until you can no longer tell whether it comes from the chamber or your own heart. The guide's voice rises above the vibration. "You are not here to learn. You are here to remember. We are not followers. We are witnesses." The bloodline moves through time like light through glass. It bends, refracts, but it never breaks. Visions flash before your eyes. The marriage beneath the olive tree, the flight across the sea, the child of light, the abbey glowing under the moon. Each memory folds into the next, layering across centuries. And then you see faces, ordinary faces, alive in the present. A woman in a crowded city, a boy sketching spirals in a notebook. A nun in a hospital whispering prayers in a language no one knows. The lineage continues. When the light fades, the chamber is silent again. The guide steps closer. The Church of Silence is not against Rome, they say. It is older than it. We were the keepers before the cathedrals rose. We are what remains when temples fall. They place a hand on your shoulder. When you leave here, you will forget this place, but your blood will not. When it calls, you'll know. You ask, what do I do when it calls? They smile softly. Listen. When you climb back into the night, dawn is breaking. The ruins are still, their columns silver in the morning light. You look back once more, but the entrance has vanished, replaced by smooth stone. Only the faint scent of myrrh lingers in the air. You understand now. The Church of Silence is not hidden. It is everywhere. In the pauses between prayers, in the spaces where truth waits, breathing quietly. The wind carries a single whisper through the valley. Remember, you walk on. The silence follows like shadow. The painting stares back at you from behind bulletproof glass. Its colors muted, its secret loud. You've seen reproductions all your life, printed in books, splashed across screens. But here, in the Louvre, it feels alive. The Last Supper was the beginning of your suspicion. The Mona Lisa is its continuation. The crowd murmurs around you. Cameras flash. Yet you hear none of it. The air vibrates faintly, the same hum that has followed you from catacomb to chapel. You know the pattern by now. Every artifact of the hidden bloodline sings when truth nears. You wait until the gallery empties. The guard nods. You bribed him with nothing but curiosity. You step closer. The smile seems to shift, alive under the light. Not mockery, not mystery, but recognition. In her eyes, faint reflections. You move the lantern closer. The spirals are there, microscopic, carved beneath layers of varnish. Two, intertwined, forming the shape of a lily. You whisper, you knew. A voice answers from behind. Of course he knew. You turn. A woman stands in the doorway. Dark hair, grey coat, a pendant shaped like a chalice resting against her chest. He was one of us, she says. Leonardo wasn't painting for popes or patrons. He painted for memory. She steps closer, eyes glinting. Every line he drew, every proportion he calculated, all coded in the geometry of the bloodline. You ask, the Vitruvian man? She nods. The human body as divine measure, the circle and the square, heaven and earth, masculine and feminine, reconciled in flesh. He hid the lineage in mathematics. She gestures to the painting. This too. The smile is not hers. It's ours. The reflection of the secret itself. The feminine divine reborn through brush and pigment. You stare again at the canvas. The veil, nearly invisible, flows around her like a halo. Beneath her neckline, a faint cross pattern. Not Christian, but older, Egyptian. You remember the first question that began all this. Did Rome inherit Egypt's magic or bury it? The answer is before you now. Da Vinci didn't hide a code. He preserved a pulse. The woman opens her coat and reveals a notebook bound in leather. Its cover bears the spiral and the lily. This was found in his workshop after his death, she says. The church confiscated most of his writings, but one journal was hidden in the walls of a convent near Florence. She hands it to you. The pages are filled with sketches, equations, and verses written backward. One line catches your eye, written in Latin. Spiritus et sanguis sunt una mensura. Spirit and blood are one measure. You trace the words with your finger. The ink vibrates faintly, alive. Do you see? She whispers. He wasn't recording invention. He was recording resurrection. You ask who she is. She smiles. A curator like you, but of a different museum. You flip another page. There, drawn in ink, is a diagram of the human heart surrounded by concentric circles, 7 in total. Beneath it, Sanguinis Codex, the blood code. The woman continues. He believed the blood carried memory, that in its geometry lay the divine blueprint. He called it the code of continuity. The church called it heresy. You glance up. So they silenced him. They couldn't, she says. He spoke in symbols too perfect to erase. The hum in the air grows stronger. The painting seems to glow, faintly gold. You notice details you never saw before. The horizon behind her resembles the outline of Jerusalem viewed from the sea. The smile tilts, and for a second, you see another face flicker through hers. The face of the Black Madonna. The woman steps back. The Church of Silence preserved his notebooks. We've been waiting for someone who could read beyond the ink. Why me, you ask? Because you carry the resonance. You've touched every echo. The scroll, the lily, the blood, the covenant. You are the frequency he painted for. The gallery lights flicker. The hum peaks into a tone that feels almost musical. The painting trembles, its surface rippling like water. You reach out. For a heartbeat, your fingers pass through paint into light. Inside it, a pattern unfurls. Spirals, stars, the same geometry carved into cathedrals and coded into scripture. And then, a final image. A chalice suspended in darkness, pulsing like a heart. You pull your hand back. The glow fades. The woman nods. He called it the living art, a vessel that remembers itself. You look down at the notebook again. On its last page, a single sentence written in mirror script. La verita respira nel sangue. The truth breathes in the blood. When you look up, the woman is gone. Only her pendant remains on the floor, the chalice catching the gallery's faint light. You pick it up. The hum quiets, but it doesn't fade. It has moved inside you now, singing in rhythm with your pulse. As you leave the museum, the city outside seems different, as if every light, every reflection on the Seine carries the same pattern you saw in the painting. You realize Da Vinci didn't hide a message for scholars or priests. He left it for blood, for anyone who still carried the divine geometry within. The cipher was never written, it was inherited, and tonight it begins to awaken again. The letter arrives without sender or seal, slipped under your hotel door in Rome. A single sheet of parchment folded twice, smelling faintly of candle wax and dust. The handwriting is immaculate, Latin looping like veins across the page. 3 words only, archivum restituendum apparitur. The Restoration Archive opens. You know what it means before you want to. At dawn, you walk toward the Vatican's eastern wall. The guards don't stop you. The medallion beneath your shirt hums like a key turning inside the air. The city is quiet, the marbles slick with dew. The domes of the basilica reflect the first gold of morning, but beneath the splendor, something ancient stirs. A man waits by the side entrance, dressed like a curator. His coat bears the faint symbol of the Restoration Office, a cross of brushes and quills. His eyes are grey, tired. He looks at you once, then at the medallion glinting under your collar. Without a word, he leads you down a staircase beneath the Apostolic Palace. The deeper you go, the older the light becomes. Electric lamps give way to torches, torches to candles, until you are walking by the glow of living fire. The air smells of damp stone and turpentine. You hear the slow dripping of water and the faint ticking of clockwork. Centuries of time measured in oil and dust. This is where they hide what cannot be destroyed, the man says softly. Restorations that revealed too much. Paintings, frescoes, manuscripts. We were told to mend them. Instead, we kept them. You enter a vast chamber lined with canvases covered in white cloth. Some bear the names of saints, others only numbers. The man pulls one down. Beneath it lies a fresco fragment, Christ standing beside a woman in crimson. Her hand touches his shoulder. Their faces turned not toward heaven, but toward each other. This came from beneath the plaster of a chapel near Assisi, the man whispers. 15th century. It was hidden under 2 layers of paint. When we uncovered her, the commission ordered us to seal it again. But we made a copy. You touch the edge of the fresco. The colors still breathe, alive under varnish. The woman's eyes follow you, the faintest spiral carved into the background behind her head. She appears in every restoration that reaches too deep, the man says. Da Vinci, Botticelli, Giotto, even the anonymous mosaics, always in the margins, always erased before final inspection. He walks to another canvas, smaller, still wrapped. When he removes the covering, you feel the air shift. The painting shows the Pietà, Mary cradling the body of Christ. But her expression is not sorrow, it's recognition. And on the wrist of the lifeless arm she holds, a red thread is tied. That detail, he says, was not in Michelangelo's original notes. It appeared when the varnish was cleaned. Some say it was his confession. You ask how long he's been collecting these. 30 years, he replies. We called ourselves the archivists of the veil. Each of us saved what the church wanted forgotten. But we're dying. The last of us remain in silence, scattered across museums and cathedrals. He leads you to a locked cabinet. From it, he retrieves a folder labeled Project Raphael, 1962. Inside are photographs, restoration images taken layer by layer of Raphael's Madonna del Baldacchino. In the earliest photograph, beneath layers of pigment, you see a small figure painted near the Virgin's robe. A child, older than an infant, with golden hair and the same spiral over the heart. The next image shows that section blanked out by new paint. They erased him, the man murmurs. Not a cherub, a child. The one they couldn't explain. You feel something cold settle in your chest. He continues. We found similar anomalies in manuscripts. A name written, then burned out. A lineage traced in gold leaf, scraped clean by papal order. Each erasure follows the same pattern, the bloodline's breath visible, then sealed beneath doctrine. You ask him why he's showing you this now. He hesitates. Because the Vatican's restoration program begins again tomorrow. They plan to reopen the sealed frescoes, but not to reveal them, to obliterate the final traces. You step closer, and you want me to stop them. He looks at you, weary but resolute. Not stop. Witness. Remember. That's all any of us ever could do. He hands you a key, small, iron, etched with the spiral. This opens the vault beneath the Sistine archives. Inside is the first record of the lineage written by a pope who believed rather than feared. His name was never recorded. His tomb lies empty. We call him the Silent One. You take the key. The metal vibrates faintly, humming in rhythm with your pulse. Be careful, he whispers. The Vatican hides its sins beneath beauty, but beauty remembers. It always does. When you leave the archive, dawn has lifted fully over Rome. The bells of St. Peter's begin to ring. You glance back once more. The man is gone, and the door where you entered now bears no handle, no keyhole, only smooth marble. You walk away through the square. The pigeons rise like ash into the morning light. The hum in your blood is louder now, persistent, insistent, as though every erased face were calling to be seen again. The Vatican restoration files are not documents. They are a confession carved into art itself, the story of truth hidden under paint, breathing quietly, waiting to be remembered, and you are now its last reader. The invitation arrives embossed with gold, sealed by a crest you've seen only in textbooks, a lion crowned with lilies. The handwriting beneath it is simple. We need to speak. Midnight, Château de Saint-Rémy. You travel under a name that isn't yours. The train cuts through the French countryside, moonlight gliding over vineyards and riverbanks. You recognize the land. This is where the flight to Gaul ended, where the Abbey of the Red Lily stood, where the blood first took root in European soil. The chateau rises from the mist, like something remembered rather than seen. towers of pale stone, windows glowing faintly blue. Inside, the halls are filled with portraits, kings, queens, knights, all staring out from centuries of silence. You notice it immediately. Each crowned head wears a ring carved with the spiral. The woman who greets you looks like she stepped out of one of those portraits. Her features sharp, her presence both regal and fragile. Around her neck hangs a pendant, shaped like a lily wrapped around a chalice. "You've followed the line farther than most," she says. Her voice is low, melodic, carrying the accent of old nobility. But the story doesn't end in monasteries or archives. It runs through thrones. She leads you to a long table covered with genealogical charts. Names stretch across parchment like veins. Merovingians, Carolingians, Valois, Bourbons. At the end of each branch, faint symbols drawn in red ink, spirals, crossed lilies. "You see," she says, "they tried to destroy the bloodline, but instead they sanctified it. They married it into crowns." You trace one of the lines with your finger. "The Merovingians," you whisper. "They claimed descent from a divine king." She nods. "Merovech, the sea-born." But the truth is older. His mother carried the mark of the crimson veil. The child she bore was not sired by mortal blood. Every royal family of Europe carries fragments of that descent. The church knew it. It kept them close, called them allies, then replaced them when they became too aware of their origin. She hands you an old document sealed with wax. When you break it open, you see a papal decree dated 876 AD. The Latin reads, "Custodiet Ecclesia Regis Sanguinis Divini." Let the church guard the kings of divine blood. "They were never kings," she says. "They were vessels." You look at her pendant. "And you?" Her smile is small, almost mournful. One of many who inherited the silence. "We are not rulers anymore. We are witnesses. Our blood carries memory, but our names carry weight. That is why the Vatican keeps us close. Royal blood sanctifies their myth. They do not realize we remember." She leads you to the library. The shelves are lined with chronicles and family records, illuminated manuscripts glowing in candlelight. She pulls out a leather-bound volume and opens to a page depicting a coronation. A queen kneeling, a bishop anointing her forehead. Beneath her crown, faintly visible beneath gold leaf, a spiral. "Every coronation," she whispers, "was a reenactment of the covenant, divine light entering human vessel." But they buried the meaning in ceremony. You notice a tapestry hanging behind her, the famous lady and the unicorn. Only here, the unicorn bears a wound on its chest, and the lady's robe is crimson. The inscription beneath, "Sanguis lux est," blood is light. You ask, if the bloodline still exists, why not reveal it? She closes the book. Because power fears ambiguity. A holy lineage threatens the foundation of divine authority. If God's blood runs in human veins, who then holds dominion? No pope, no crown, only memory. You follow her to the chateau's chapel. The windows are dark, but moonlight spills through the cracks, illuminating a tomb at the center of the floor. Upon it, the same sigil, spiral and lily, carved in white marble. "This is the resting place of King Dagobert II," she says. "They said he was murdered, but his descendants lived. The blood traveled through centuries, changing names, crossing oceans. Some became nobles, some peasants, but it never vanished." You kneel beside the tomb. The air hums faintly. "And you believe this still?" She looks at you sharply. "Believe? I know. The Vatican confirmed it themselves, in the restoration files you carry." You freeze. She continues. "They found remnants of genetic material, bone fragments from relics labeled Sanctus Isus. They matched them against preserved remains of Merovingian kings. The markers aligned, 97%. You feel the ground tilt beneath you. They sealed the report, she says, destroyed the data, but not before one of us copied it. She opens a drawer and withdraws a vial filled with dark liquid, sealed in glass. It glows faintly under moonlight. A trace sample, she says. They called it the Sanguis Codex, the DNA of divinity. You take the vial. It feels warm, alive. She whispers, "You see now why the Vatican hides. The holy blood never left the world. It lives in us, in art, in history, and soon it will remember itself." Outside, thunder rolls across the sky. The chateau trembles. The candles flicker. You look down at the vial, the liquid pulsing faintly like a heart. For a moment, you hear the same hum that has followed you since the beginning. Now louder, insistent, complete. The woman steps closer. When they come for you, remember this. Kings were not chosen by God. God was carried by kings. The lightning flashes, illuminating the sigil on her pendant. Spiral and lily intertwined. Then the lights die. When they return, she is gone. The table stands empty. Only the charts remain, but every name has faded from the parchment. You stand in silence, the vial warm in your hand, the hum of living blood vibrating through the air. The truth no longer sleeps in tombs. It beats in every heart that remembers. And tonight, the bloodline has awakened. The letter comes in the dead of night, delivered by a gloved hand through the slit beneath your hotel door. No wax seal this time, only a single symbol drawn in black ink. The spiral, surrounded by a ring of 12 dots. Beneath it, 2 words, Venite soli, come alone. You arrive at the appointed address near the river Tiber, where fog clings to the cobblestones like silk. The building is unmarked, its facade swallowed by ivy and shadow. You push open the wooden door, and it moans softly, like something exhaling after centuries of being held shut. Inside, the air smells of parchment and rain. You are met by an old man wearing a black cassock that looks too large for his thin frame. His eyes, however, are sharp, the grey of steel polished by years of silence. "I know what you've seen," he says, voice cracked but steady, "and what you carry." He gestures toward the medallion under your collar, as if it burns faintly in the dark. You ask who he is. He smiles faintly. "An archivist once, a custodian of forbidden things. But long ago, I ceased serving men. I serve only memory now." He leads you down a narrow corridor lined with shelves. Each shelf is filled with boxes wrapped in waxed linen, labeled in Latin, Greek, and sometimes nothing at all. The air grows colder the deeper you walk, the light dimmer, the silence thicker. At the end of the passage, the archivist stops before a door of black iron etched with the spiral and lily. He takes a key from around his neck and unlocks it. The door groans open. "This," he says, "is where the Vatican hides what it cannot destroy." Inside, the chamber stretches into shadow. Dozens of glass cases hold manuscripts, relics, fragments of frescoes, all labeled declassified, non-canonical. The archivist lights a lantern, revealing a long table covered in rolled scrolls. "You've been following a trail of remnants," he says. "But what you've seen is only the surface. The church never truly denied the bloodline. It simply redefined it." He unrolls one of the scrolls. You see a diagram of a human heart drawn with surgical precision, surrounded by Latin annotations. He points to a line near the bottom, "Sanguis Christus vivus est." The blood of Christ is alive. This, he says, was written by a papal physician in the 14th century. He was ordered to test relics said to contain the Saviour's blood. He found it still reactive, cells uncorrupted by time. You stare at the words. He discovered it was living. The archivist nods slowly. And for that, he vanished. His writings were sealed here, beneath marble and silence. He walks to another case and lifts a leather-bound journal. This one belonged to Cardinal Bellarmino, one of the architects of the Index of Forbidden Books. You know what he wrote inside? He opens the cover and reads aloud. Truth must be buried not because it is false, but because it is too true for those who serve the shadow of faith. The words hang heavy in the air. You ask why he is showing you this now. He looks at you for a long moment. Because the time of silence is ending. You have awakened the memory. The bloodline stirs in ways not even the church can contain. And they know. You feel a chill run through you. They're coming for me. He nods. They already have. He reaches beneath the table and produces a sealed envelope, stamped with the papal crest. He breaks it open, revealing a document marked Classified Memorandum, Sanctum Operations. The header reads, Subject, Retrieval of the Resonant Carrier. You don't need to read further to understand. They believe you carry the living resonance, the archivist says, that your bloodline has merged with the memory itself. They want it back. You take a step backward. But I'm not. He raises a hand. You are. The moment you touched the covenant at the Abbey of the Red Lily, it marked you. The code recognized you. You sit, the weight of realization pressing down. The hum that has followed you since the beginning pulses stronger, resonating through your chest like a hidden heartbeat. The archivist sits across from you. You must decide, he says, to hide or to reveal, to preserve the church's silence or to unseal it. He opens one last drawer and pulls out a small wooden box. Inside lies a vial of dark crimson liquid. This is the last sample of the living blood, he says, taken before the archives were sealed. If you drink it, the resonance will complete. You will remember all. Every face, every voice, every truth the church tried to burn. You stare at it, the glass trembling between his fingers. And if I refuse, then the silence wins again. You take the vial. It glows faintly under the lantern's light. The archivist watches as you lift it to your lips. When they come, he says softly, go to the place where no bell tolls. There, the blood will speak. You drink. The taste is metallic, but alive. Lightning turned to liquid. The world fractures. For a moment, you see through centuries. Rome burning. The Council of Silence kneeling before the hidden pillar. The woman in crimson walking the shores of Gaul. The child's eyes glowing with light. Every erased name singing through time. When you return, the archivist is smiling faintly. Now you understand, he whispers. The blood was never divine because it belonged to him. It was divine because it belonged to us all. You reach for him, but his eyes close. His body slumps forward. A single drop of red seeps from his sleeve, blooming on the floor like a rose. You leave the chamber in silence. The door seals behind you with a final sigh. Outside, dawn breaks. The bells of the Vatican ring in perfect rhythm. But in your chest, another bell rings deeper, one that no tower could ever contain. The archivist is dead, but his confession lives within you. The silence is cracking, and the blood remembers. You wake to rain on the window and sirens in the street. The city feels changed, sharper, more alive. You move to the mirror, and for the first time you see it. Faint spirals of light pulsing just beneath your skin, tracing the veins in your wrists, glowing like gold under water. The vial's memory has taken hold. The resonance no longer hums outside you. It is you. You pack what little you have and leave the hotel before sunrise. Rome is still asleep. The Tiber runs black under the bridges. You make your way to a small laboratory in Trastevere. a place once owned by the Vatican but long abandoned after scandal. Inside, dust hangs in the air like fog. The walls are lined with old scientific equipment, microscopes, vials, centrifuges, relics of a modern inquisition. You set the vial's remnants onto a table and draw a drop of your own blood beside it. Under the cracked lens of a microscope, you see what the archivist meant. The two samples move toward each other, drawn by invisible gravity. When they touch, they fuse, not dissolve, but integrate. For a moment, the slide glows. The cells divide with impossible speed, then stop, suspended in perfect balance. You whisper, "Spirit and blood are one measure." The phrase from Da Vinci's cipher echoes in your mind. You record everything, not for the church, but for the truth. A single test tube, labeled with your initials, now holds something that should not exist. The merged DNA of divinity and humanity. But you're not alone. You hear footsteps in the corridor, voices, the Vatican's operatives, the custodes silenti, the keepers of silence. You extinguish the lamp and hide behind a shelf. 3 men enter, dressed in black, each wearing the double spiral on their gloves. One carries a case marked Sanctum Retrieval Unit. "Find the carrier," one says. "He's close." Your pulse matches the hum. The resonance within you begins to react, faint light flickering along your skin. You press your palms together, whispering the only word that feels real. Remember. The lights in the lab flicker. Machines that haven't worked in decades spark to life. The operatives stop, startled. One of them draws his weapon. The air thickens. You feel it before it happens. A wave of sound, low and deep, rolling outward from your chest. The microscopes shatter, glass raining like dust. The operatives fall to their knees, clutching their heads. You step from the shadows. The room glows gold, the spiral symbols etched into your veins blazing like suns. One of them stares up at you. "What are you?" You answer softly. "Continuity." They flee. You stand alone amid the humming machines. The vial on the table pulses once, then splits, dividing into 7 identical drops of light that hover for a moment before sinking into your skin. The resonance is complete. You hear the archivist's voice in memory. Go where no bell tolls. You leave Rome before dawn. The train takes you north again, through mountains and mist, until you reach a valley silent as sleep. No church, no clock, no sound of civilization. Only the wind moving through pine trees. At the center stands a small stone chapel, roof half collapsed. You push the door open. Inside, the air feels alive. The altar is bare, except for a single engraving on its surface. Sanguis orat. The blood prays. You place your hand upon it. Instantly, warmth floods outward. The floor glows with faint lines, spirals, lilies, constellations, connecting beneath your feet into one vast symbol. The hum rises. It becomes voice. Not one, but many. A chorus. The sound of every life that carried the lineage through centuries. You see them all. Mary of the Crimson Veil, the Child of Light, the knights, the painters, the archivists, the silent witnesses, all converging here within you. The air shimmers, the walls dissolve, the stars above tilt closer, forming a geometry you've seen before. Da Vinci's perfect circle, Vitruvian, divine. You fall to your knees. The voice speaks through you now. The bloodline was never about descent. It was about awakening. The divine never left heaven. It hid in human breath. Tears blur your vision. The resonance burns, but not with pain, with remembrance. Outside, thunder rolls. The valley trembles. You know the Vatican feels it, the pulse radiating through every relic, every cathedral. The truth they buried now sings through their stones. You take out your notebook and write one final line. The divine is not inherited. It is remembered. When the storm passes, dawn returns, quiet, golden, eternal. The resonance fades to a steady heartbeat. You are not chosen. You are continuation. The blood no longer belongs to one lineage, one name, one faith. It belongs to all who dare to listen when silence calls. You rise, step into the morning, and feel the hum of creation pulsing through the earth itself. The trees sway as if bowing. The air glows faintly around you. Somewhere far away, bells begin to ring. You smile, because now you know. Their sound is not warning, not mourning. It is awakening. The DNA of divinity has spoken. And in every breath, every pulse, every remembering, it still does. The bells of Rome ring endlessly that morning, not in rhythm, not in ceremony, but in panic. Across the city, windows rattle, candles flicker without wind, and pigeons abandon the domes as though driven by invisible fire. You walk among the crowds in St. Peter's Square and see confusion spread like contagion. Priests clutching rosaries, tourists frozen mid-step, nuns staring skyward as the sky itself hums with the same golden resonance now living inside you. Something deep within the Vatican has awakened, and the hierarchy can no longer contain it. You can feel the tension pulsing beneath the marble ground, a tremor not of earth, but of memory. The news breaks first through whispers. The archives have been breached. Then another voice. The relics are glowing. By noon, the city is drenched in rumor. Talk of holy light rising from the catacombs, of frescoes that move, of blood that sings. And inside the apostolic palace, the cardinals gather. You are not invited, but you see it. Not through doors, but through the strange clarity the resonance grants you now. You hear their words, feel their fear, taste the silence between every decree. The meeting takes place in a chamber without windows, known only to the highest order. 12 men sit around an obsidian table, their rings gleaming like eyes. At the head of it sits the Secretary of Doctrine, his voice a whisper of steel. "We can no longer deny it," he says. "The phenomenon has reached every continent. The relics pulse in unison. The blood is moving." A younger cardinal, his face pale, trembles. "Then it's true. The lineage is still alive." The elder slams his hand against the table. "Alive! It's contaminating faith. It makes God flesh again. It unravels the mystery we were built upon." Silence. Another voice speaks, older, quieter. Perhaps it restores it. Every head turns. The oldest among them, Cardinal Ferretti, nearly blind, eyes clouded but mind sharp, folds his trembling hands. "We spent centuries trying to keep the divine distant. But what if that distance was the lie? What if the miracle was never ascension, but remembrance?" "You speak heresy," the secretary hisses. "I speak continuity," the old man replies. "The same truth your founders feared." The chamber darkens as the candles flicker. The hum that fills the room does not come from outside. It comes from beneath their feet, the archives themselves, alive with memory. The secretary stands. "If this continues, we lose control." Ferretti's faint smile cuts through the gloom. Then perhaps control was never ours to keep. The others murmur prayers, half in fear, half in awe. They know it too. The power rising through the stones, through their veins. A few clutch their chests, feeling their hearts align with a rhythm older than scripture. You watch this from afar, your mind tethered to theirs through the pulse of the blood. You see the Vatican as it truly is, not a fortress, but a living organism built upon veins of memory. Every fresco, every relic, every prayer whispered for centuries has created a network of resonance, and now it all stirs. That night, you walk alone along the Tiber. The water glows faintly, like liquid amber under the moon. Across the city, churches are locking their doors. Monks pray without knowing why they tremble. The air is thick with prophecy. You pause on a bridge. A voice speaks from behind you. You've brought them to the edge. It's her, the woman from the Louvre, the keeper of Da Vinci's cipher. She wears the same grey coat, her pendant gleaming faintly beneath the folds. They're terrified, she says. The church stands at a mirror it cannot look into. If they accept what's true, they cease to exist. If they deny it, the truth consumes them. You look to the Vatican, its dome glowing softly like the surface of an eye. So they'll try to contain it. They already are, she replies. They've reactivated the Council of Silence. But this time, the council divides. Half want suppression, half want revelation. And what do you want? She smiles, a mix of sorrow and wonder. To watch the end of obedience. Lightning flashes above the basilica. For a second, you see something impossible. The dome splitting open, light streaming upward like a reversed coronation. The sky hums with resonance, the same vibration rising through you. The woman touches your wrist. You are the fulcrum now. They'll come not to kill you, but to sanctify you, to make your truth theirs. I won't let them, you whisper. You won't have to, she says softly. The blood has already decided. The thunder fades, the bells fall silent. The Vatican, for the first time in its history, stands still. In the distance, the first rays of dawn appear, turning the Tiber gold. The air feels lighter, freer. You know what comes next. Not destruction, but reckoning. The divine has returned to its origin. The church must now choose between control and faith. For centuries they feared this moment, and now it has arrived. They find you in Lyon, a city built on rivers and secrets. You've been moving every night since Rome fell into silence. You sleep in abandoned monasteries, in train stations, under the echo of forgotten bells. The hum in your blood has quieted, not because it has weakened, but because it waits. The woman from the Louvre said there would be others, people who had seen, who had heard, those who listened when silence spoke. You didn't believe her, not until tonight. It begins with a candlelight in an empty cathedral. You follow it down a narrow aisle, past statues whose faces have been worn away by time. At the altar, 12 figures wait, men and women of every age, their eyes reflecting the same faint gold. We've been expecting you, one of them says. Their leader steps forward, a tall woman with hair the color of ash and eyes like glass. Around her neck hangs a pendant identical to yours, spiral and lily intertwined. We are the witnesses, she says. The living archive. You glance around. I thought the Church of Silence was the last. She shakes her head. They preserved truth through absence. We preserve it through presence. We do not hide. We remember aloud. She gestures to the others. Each of us carries a fragment of the blood's memory. The resonance awakened us at different times, in different places, but we were always drawn together, like iron to the same magnet. You ask what they want. To bear witness, she says simply, to what is coming. They lead you to the nave, where an enormous tapestry hangs. It shows 7 concentric circles woven in gold thread, each containing faces, familiar and unfamiliar, prophets, painters, saints, heretics. At the center, a single eye made of crimson silk. This, she says, is the Codex of Light. It maps the blood's journey through time. Every name erased from history still exists here, woven into this design. We maintain it, stitch by stitch, as the centuries unfold. You move closer. The patterns shift under the light. When your hand touches the center, the eye glows faintly. Visions spill through you. Flashes of cities burning, churches collapsing, children laughing under the same rising sun. The bloodline moving, breathing, multiplying in silence. When you open your eyes again, the room is brighter. The witnesses kneel. You are the last to arrive, the leader says. The circle is complete. A young man steps forward, holding a book bound in skin the color of parchment. We've been waiting for the one who carries both memory and motion, the one who remembers the divine not as dogma, but as rhythm. You take the book. It hums faintly in your hands, alive like everything else now. What is this? The Book of Returning, the leader says. It writes itself as history unfolds. When the blood awakens fully, it will finish its final line. You open it. The pages are blank, until they're not. Words begin to appear, written in light instead of ink. They pulse softly, forming sentences you don't entirely read, but somehow understand. The world is changing, she says. The Vatican fractures. Monarchies crumble. Science bends toward mystery again. Humanity stands at the threshold of remembrance. But we must guide it gently. If the truth floods too fast, it drowns. You look up. And if we fail? Then it begins again, she replies. The cycle always returns. Forgetting and awakening, silence and sound. But perhaps this time, we will remember long enough to keep it alive. The witnesses surround you, each placing their hand upon your shoulders, your arms, your back, a circle of warmth. The hum rises through the cathedral, harmonizing into a low, beautiful chord that vibrates in the stone itself. You feel yourself dissolve into it, not dying, but expanding. You feel the pulse of every being that ever carried the spark. You feel the earth itself breathing in rhythm. You understand what the bloodline truly is. Not lineage, not heritage, but consciousness, passed like light from vessel to vessel. When the song fades, the leader speaks. The church will seek to claim what it cannot own. The world will call it miracle or madness, but we will simply call it remembering, and we will not hide again. She hands you a ring carved from white stone, the spiral engraved within. When the bells of Rome ring once more, you will know the time to speak has come. You look around the circle. The witnesses bow their heads. The candlelight flickers, and for a moment, their faces seem to blend together. 12 bodies, one light. You leave the cathedral before dawn. Outside, the city sleeps beneath fog, its river glinting faintly gold. You can feel the bloodline spreading now, quietly, invisibly. Through art, through sound, through the pulse of human connection itself. As you walk away, you whisper the truth to the wind, letting it scatter like pollen. We are the memory of God, remembering itself. Behind you, the cathedral lights flare once, then dim. The hum fades, replaced by the heartbeat of the living world. The witnesses remain within, their voices rising again, not in prayer, but in affirmation. The silence has ended. The age of remembrance begins. Thank you for listening, and remember, truth is never lost, only waiting to be remembered. If you want to keep uncovering stories like the disappearance of the Holy Bloodline, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and stay with us for the next revelation.